Hello there, my name's Neville and I'm one of the leaders here at Emmanuel Church, and I'm really looking forward today for us to be able to go back into the book of Exodus. We spent kind of from this time last year through to July looking at the first 15 chapters of Exodus, and we're going to start the series again today, go back in at chapter 16. And we've called this series The Other Side. And the first 15 chapters, let me give you a very brief catch-up, as it were. It kind of starts with the people of Israel in slavery in the land of Egypt. And there's then a story of how God calls Moses, and Moses goes and confronts Pharaoh, and in terms of saying, let my people go, let them out of Egypt, let them out of slavery. Pharaoh won't do that, and then a series of plagues come on the land of Egypt, and eventually Pharaoh relents and says, okay, you can go, leave the land, you're not under slavery anymore. And Moses leads the people out to the Red Sea and miraculously opens the Red Sea, and they pass through to the other side. But what's happening is that Pharaoh's changed his mind. The Egyptian army are chasing after the Israelites, but the Red Sea closes back in on them and destroys them. And in chapter 15, we get a song of deliverance, and that's where we left it last time. And so today we're going to pick the story up. We're going to have read to us the first 12 verses of chapter 16 of the book of Exodus.
They set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had departed from the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the people of Israel said to them, "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather daily." So Moses and Aaron said to all the people of Israel, "At evening you shall know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against the Lord. For what are we that you grumble against us?" And Moses said, "When the Lord gives you in the evening meat to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, because the Lord has heard your grumbling, that you grumble against him, what are we? Your grumbling is not against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Say to the whole congregation of the people of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling." And as soon as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the people of Israel, they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord said to Moses, "I have heard the grumbling of the people of Israel. Say to them, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread. Then you shall know that I am the Lord your God."
I think there's two things here, particularly I want to look at in these verses. The chapter 16 and into the first few verses we'll mention of chapter 17. One is grumbling in the desert, which won't surprise you from what you've had read to you. And the second is provision from heaven. So let's look at those in order, and we'll particularly focus on the first 4 verses of chapter 16. So in verse 1, it says, "The people of Israel have now come to the wilderness of Sin," and it talks about the 15th day of the second month. So we're a number of weeks in here into their passing through the Red Sea and being led into the wilderness or the desert. It's a matter of weeks. And this would be, when we talk about the wilderness here, it kind of really means desert place. And it was clear that God had led them there. And then in verse 2, we start to suddenly get this. And it says, "And the whole congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron." And we don't often talk about grumbling or murmuring or whatever word you want to use, but it's hard to look at this passage and not mention this. And as I was preparing this, it just struck me. You can kind of think you're immune from this. You can kind of think, oh yeah, I often think that person tends to have a little tendency to grumble a little bit, but not me. But the more I thought about it, so that's not really true. I have to guard my own heart in this area as well, because there are plenty of things where I think, I wish it wasn't quite like this. Or why is it like this? Can't it be like this? And when's this going to end? And when's this going to happen? And I've got to be careful here. What we're looking at here is, I think this grumbling, the way this Hebrew word is used here is really, it's an expression of dissatisfaction with circumstances. That's what's happening here. And it's the whole congregation, which is why I looked at it, I thought, I've got to be careful. I don't think I can call myself immune from this, because it's saying the whole congregation of the people of Israel. Not some, no, the whole congregation. So we've got to watch our hearts here. We've talked before about this book of Exodus. It parallels our own story here. We can learn things from the story of this people that apply into our own lives, and this is definitely one of them. We can think, I'll be the exception to this grumbling thing. I'm not sure I am completely the exception. I think I've got things to learn myself here. So let's just look at this for a few moments. Verse 3, it kind of gets specific here, and it says, and the people of Israel said to them, this is what the grumbling looks like. Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt. Wow. What? It would have been better, saying, if God had killed us in Egypt. You think, what are you talking about? What? How can you say that? It would have been better if God had killed us in Egypt. It'd be better if we'd have died by the hand of God in Egypt than be brought here. You think, no, it wouldn't. No, you're not seeing it straight. It says in Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is deceitful above all things. And you can find yourself thinking some things where when you step back, you think, why did I think that? That's not true. And you can even spend days and weeks going down a path, and you suddenly need to be put and think, what was I thinking? How did I get there in my thinking? You see, they're completely undervaluing their deliverance. God had miraculously freed them, and they're going, we'd be better off dead there. No, you wouldn't. And for us, whatever we might think, we have been delivered through the gospel from enemies that were too strong for us, miraculously by God, through Jesus Christ. That is our story. It is an amazing deliverance. It is amazing grace on our lives, and we should be in wonder of it. Okay? We were not better off spiritually dead than we are now alive in Christ. We can't think, it's what? It's not right. We're not. And it goes on. It goes on. We would have been better off dead there when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. Yeah, we just sat around and had lovely food, and plenty of time to eat it. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You were slaves. And you didn't have enough food, and you didn't have enough time, and you were exhausted. What are you talking about? See, we call this today selective recall, where you think, it was so much better then. So much better. And you kind of find yourself remembering what you want to remember, not the totality of what it was like. You remember the good bits. This is what's going on here. It's not true. They didn't have time. They didn't have lovely food to sit around and just do whatever they wanted. It's not true. You see, and we can have moments where we think, do you know what? I wonder if it'd be better off for me now if I could just do what I wanted to do, like I used to do before I met Jesus. Just follow my own hunches and wills and just get up and do what I want to do. It'd be better, whatever relationship I want, whatever career choice I want, just go after money 100%. Yeah, it'd be better off. And we forget the emptiness. We forget the loneliness. We forget the fear, the inner turmoil, the exhaustion of trying to climb the ladder faster than someone else, or wondering if we're going to fall off, and what will people think of us. We forget that bit. But what happens here is, you see, this grumbling about circumstances, this thinking of this would have been better if it was like this, It often leads somewhere. And this is why we have to guard our hearts. This is why I have to guard my heart. I have to be careful. Because what it turns into, it says we're better off dead. We had all this time to eat this lovely food. And now it goes on to, for you, Moses and Aaron, have brought us out into this wilderness to kill the whole assembly with hunger. I think, what? What are you saying? This now has turned into personal attack. What? And you can think, what are you talking about? Moses has spent decades under the hand of God, being prepared by God for these moments. And he's risked his life to go to Pharaoh and confront Pharaoh. Required huge faith in God. He didn't really want to do it. And God picked him out and chose him and said, no, you go and do this. And he's led, through faith, he's now led the people of Israel out of slavery. And they're going, no, you've brought us here to kill us all with hunger. Leadership can be tough sometimes. You think, what are you saying here? They're imputing motive to him. They're saying, no, you've brought us here to kill us. Whereas if they'd have thought about it for a moment, no, Moses, God's hand is on you, and you've led us here through faith and sacrifice. You're not trying to kill us, you're trying to save us and rescue us under the hand of God. And we can do that sometimes. We can think things about people. But to be very careful, we can think things about people without really knowing whether it's true or not, and it can just grow in our hearts. And I kind of live by this little saying. I try to keep to this as much as I can, and that is to always think the very best of someone until I'm absolutely certain that something different is true. Always think the best. Always think the best until I'm absolutely certain that what I'm thinking isn't quite right. Always if you're doubting, any doubt, no, you have the benefit of any doubt I've got. Always try and live like that. Always try and think the best of people. If you're not sure, think the best until you're certain that isn't right. It's always what I try and do. And I'm not saying here, I'm not really talking, this isn't about, you say now I can't say anything about a leader in this church or the way things can be different. No, I'm not saying that at all. Leaders, we need to be accountable for our actions. We're trying to do our best before God. But this isn't really, the root of this isn't really about, the root of this comes out of a dissatisfaction with personal circumstance that turns into something else. And as I've prepared this, I've got, no, God, I've got to guard my own heart here. I've got to guard my own heart. Deuteronomy 8, which is Moses is near the end of his life. He's kind of given this talk to the people. And he says this, Deuteronomy 8, verse 2 and 3, says, you shall remember the whole way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness, that he might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. Moses is saying, no, God's led you. We're a few weeks in here. And then Moses looks back and says, no, look at how God has led you for 40 years. And God's trying to work out what's in your heart. Are you going to follow what I'm saying to you when it gets tough? You see, the people were grumbling. There was no food and water, but it was part of God's plan for them, this desert experience, 40 years. You think, why? What's that got to do with us? You see, my life, I think in the desert times, in the barren times, in the times where the sun feels very hot and doesn't feel like there's much shade and it's tough, I think those are the times that we really change and God puts stuff in our lives and he accelerates the transformation into the image of Jesus Christ. I can't claim, I think this is Billy Graham says this, I think I've quoted this before. He says this, the fruit is produced in the valleys and not mountaintops. We can want to live our lives like on the top of a mountain with beautiful expansive views and God feels near and it's all wonderful and think, I could stay here forever. One day we will be with him forever, see him face to face. But right now, we can't live our lives just at the top of mountains. Sometimes we have to live our life in the valleys where it seems a lot more closed in, where you can't see very far. It seems a bit darker. But actually, that's where the fruit is grown. And that's a bit like our lives. And we can want to run away from these moments. We can want to run away from these seasons. And sometimes God just takes us through these desert experiences. This is what happens because he's at work in our lives. And I think I've learned myself to try and embrace them. I think with suffering, I mean, Paul writes, he talks about sharing in the sufferings of Christ. And I think the more we're able to share in struggle and suffering, the more we're able to help others in their struggle and suffering. The more we can empathize with others when we've been through some of these things ourselves. People who just seem to sail through life, never have a problem, no one ever says no to them, they just seem to do what they want, can be quite shallow people. Maybe not the person you'd go to when you're in a bit of trouble and you need some help. You see, we're being transformed into the image of Christ, and our hearts can be happy and sensitive, even in the wilderness. Today's society, we like technique to fix things. We like to escape. We want a program to fix this thing. Maybe we want, just give me those pills and that'll fix this thing. Or actually, just put me to sleep and when I wake up and I'll be changed. Okay, it'll all be fine. We want to get out of difficult seasons very quickly. And sometimes that isn't the way that God works with us. See, we live in a broken world where sin has huge impact. And God manages to weave something beautiful through our lives as we follow him and find him in desert places. That's what we'll see here, chapter after chapter, as we go through, continue in this book of Exodus. God's leading these people in this wilderness because he's trying to, are you going to follow me? Are you going to come to me? Are you going to acknowledge me? Are you going to make me your God? You're going to worship me? So this is what we see, and we'll come back to this again through this series. There's grumbling in the desert. So let's be on the guard. I speak to myself. Let's guard our hearts in the desert place and believe for God to do something beautiful. Now, what happens here? The second point I wanted to make was provision from heaven. And I want to look at three ways that I think the provision of this manna and bread is actually a shadow or a signpost to a much greater provision to come hundreds of years later in the person of Jesus Christ. You think, well, why do you say that? Well, let me give you these three reasons. See, this manna or this bread, and as we see, we didn't read it, but actually in the beginning of chapter 17, Moses is told to strike a rock and water comes out. This provision of manna, bread, and water points to Jesus because it comes down from heaven as a gift. Okay? Verse 4 says this, and the Lord said to Moses, behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven. Wow. I'm about to rain bread from heaven. You see, there was this period of silence from God for around 400 years between the end of the Old Testament, the book of Malachi, and the beginning of the New Testament and the book of Matthew. There's like this 400-year gap, kind of silence. And then it says in Romans 5, verse 6, it says, for while we were still weak, at the right time, Christ dies for the ungodly. You see, God chose a moment to break in on planet Earth through his son, Jesus Christ. That's what happens. He literally didn't quite rain down from heaven, but it wasn't far short. Jesus is born into a stable in Bethlehem. Okay, there is this prophetic word, but God decides, no, this is the moment. This is the moment. This is the moment when my son will be born and come forth into the earth. And Jesus, it said of Jesus, Jesus says it in John 6:35, says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. You see, Jesus comes from heaven, is tempted in every way, but is without sin. You see, this bread we've read about in Exodus 16 It's not made by human hands. It's not baked by people. There wasn't a group form. There wasn't some plan that came and said, I want you to divide into groups and go out and bake this and then make it. And these are the ingredients. This is how you do it. That's not what happened. Jesus, who is fully God, comes to be born in Bethlehem, to grow up in obscurity, to walk this dusty earth, to do ministry for 3 years, to go to a cross and die for us. Blessing, grace, and mercy rain down from heaven in the person of Jesus Christ. This is what happened. This is what happened with this manna. It's just God I'm going to rain bread from heaven. As a gift. As a gift. You see, this isn't something they'd earned. In fact, if you think about this, verse 2 and 3, what I've just been through, they're complaining, they're grumbling, they're imputing wrong motive against Moses. Do they deserve this bread to be rained down? Of course they don't. If I was writing this story, I would be more like, behold, I'm about to rain down judgment on you and anger on you. Not miraculous provision, but this is our God. This is the patience of God. We reject, we turn away, we say no, and God just pours out blessing. This is what happens. You see, they couldn't earn this gift anyway. Just like us, we can't earn approval with God. We have to accept the perfect work and life of Jesus. I think we still can be prone to try and earn the approval of God, but we can't qualify ourselves. This bread from heaven was a gift from God, and Jesus is a gift for us. John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. God so loved the world that he gave his only son. It's a gift. He gave it. He gave Jesus to us, just as manna rained down from heaven. You see, this thing, they didn't have to travel somewhere special. The bread appeared just outside the camp where they were. And we can think we have to do certain things. We have to be good enough. We have to go to certain places. We have to clean ourselves up. And then we could receive Jesus. But that's not right. That's not the gospel. See, Jesus is our ultimate provision. And we're found where we are in our need of a saviour. We don't have to go special places or do special things. And you can come in here today. You can even be a follower of Jesus. May not be. But you can feel like life's dark at the moment. It's difficult. There's some things I'm facing where I can't see the way through. And actually, it feels lonely. It feels bleak. Maybe some things have been done to you. It's not even your fault you've ended up in the situation you're in. It's your circumstances. It's just crowded in on you. It's dark. Doesn't feel good. Maybe you've made some decisions that are unwise and you've got yourself into the place you're in. You don't have to clean yourself up for Jesus. You don't have to go somewhere special. Just as God comes and just rains bread from heaven just outside the camp here, you can do that in your life. You see, God doesn't leave you. If you feel today, if you come today, you feel like I feel like I'm in a wilderness state. My life feels like a bit of a desert at the moment. It feels pretty barren, pretty bare. It's not easy. God doesn't leave you in a wilderness situation. He provides bread for you in the person of Jesus Christ. He tells you how to, and he tells you how to get it. That's what he does. You see, there isn't supposed to be bread in the desert. That's not what happens. That's not the normal thing. You don't go into a desert and camp and wake up in the morning and bread's there. It's not normal. It's miraculous provision. And God says this. God wants to say this to some of you today. It's like you can be desperate to escape from your circumstances. You can be desperate to get out what you think is a desert experience. It feels like wilderness. It feels horrible. And you're desperate to get out. And God says, don't despise your circumstances. Maybe I've led you into them. And actually, there's beautiful provision in the midst of the desert. We read in Scripture about God causing rivers and streams to come in the midst of desert places. God doesn't seem to say, it's the desert's too hard for me. Can't work in the desert. Oh, he can. He breaks in the desert. He brings oasis of water. He brings sweet provision in the midst of desert places. He's the God who causes streams and pools of blessing to rise up in desert places. And he can do that in your life. And maybe today you just need to stop fighting against your I don't know what your circumstances are. You need to be wise. You may need to talk to someone. Sometimes we can fight against our circumstances, and God's going, no, I will lead you out. It's not now, and there's something beautiful for you in the midst of them. There's sweetness and provision from God. So this manna, this bread comes down as a gift from heaven. Jesus comes down as a gift from heaven. The second way I think it points to Jesus is this: the bread had to be received daily. You think, well, what? Well, let's look at this. Verse 4 continues. The Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I'm about to rain bread from heaven, for you and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day." I think, yeah, okay. See, the people had to go out every day and gather a portion for that day. It was a day's portion. So God rains down this provision, and they go out in the morning and get enough for the day. They had to go and get it daily. To practically outwork the miraculous provision, they had to go and get it daily. Even in the wilderness, in the desert, you had to go and get it. And I think this is our story. I think in the wilderness, the desert places of our lives sometimes, where it just feels tough and things aren't quite the way we thought they'd be, although we never imagined it would work out like this. There is provision for us in the form of Jesus Christ, in the person of Jesus Christ, but we have to go and get it. We have to live with this strange tension of Scripture's clear that if you receive Jesus into your life and make him the Lord of your life, he comes to live on the inside of you. But it's like we have to go and acknowledge him. We have to go and receive him daily. I'm just reminded of Matthew 6. Jesus teaches his disciples to pray. He says, "Give us this day our daily bread." There's something about the cycle, the 24 hours that God has given us, where the sun comes up and the sun comes down. We sleep, we wake. We sleep, we wake. Okay, there's something in that for us that we would be wise to acknowledge. This manna turns up every morning. And there's this daily rhythm for our lives. And there's bread for each day. There wasn't bread for next week. And my experience in my life is it took me a while to work this out. I'm quite late to the party here. It took me a while to work this out. God's supply of grace is enough for today and not for what I might imagine happening next week or next month. I don't think God promises me peace for that, but God does promise me supply and grace and energy for the things that are in front of me today. He doesn't promise me grace and peace for what might happen in my imagination. Okay, that's not really what Scripture says. He gives us enough for the day, and we can get up in the morning and acknowledge him and receive his provision. Will we daily invite his lordship into our life, the lordship, the rule, the reign of Christ into our lives, and say, "Jesus, I want you to rule and reign in my life today for the things that I'm facing today, and I believe you will be enough for me today. You are God's miraculous provision for today, and I couldn't possibly want any more, or certainly need any more." Will we do that? Do we do that? I think that's what we see here. God provides for the day. See, we need to try and live daily in the provision of God through Jesus Christ. He is our daily bread. Will we receive him daily? Will we acknowledge him daily? Do we go to Jesus, or I would put it the other way around. I would say, don't go to Jesus for your needs. Go to Jesus as the one who you need. Go to Jesus as the person that you need, not just because you want some needs met. He's there for you. So we've looked at this. How does this bread point to Jesus? Well, it's a free gift that rained down from heaven. It has to be received daily. We have to go and acknowledge Jesus' rule and reign in our life daily. The third thing is this. This bread was received by some and rejected by others. See, we get a further account of this in the book of Numbers. Numbers 11, verse 5 says this. We get a bit more detail now about the wonder of Egypt and how happy they were. We remember the fish now that we ate in Egypt, that cost nothing. Well, yeah, but you were slaves. The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions and the garlic. That's what we remember in Egypt. But now, it says, Numbers 11, verse 6, but now our strength is dried up and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at. Oh, all we've got is just this miraculous provision from God, and it's just boring and ugly. That's what they're saying. See, now they're complaining before God provided miraculously for them, and now they're also complaining after God's miraculously provided and saying, this is boring. And this folk. See, it reminds me of someone else. Hundreds of years before Jesus was born in Bethlehem, the prophet Isaiah writes this, Isaiah 53 verse 3. He says, talking about Jesus, he was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised and we esteemed him not. Even though God miraculously provides bread, some people still rejected it and thought it was better in Egypt. It's nothing but this manna to look at. How boring, how unattractive. And actually, this is the miraculous provision of God that's being rejected. And this is what can happen with Jesus Christ. The kingdom of God's described as this treasure that's hidden in a field, and we just can spend our whole lives walking over it and not realizing it's there. We reject beautiful, miraculous provision. We just don't take it seriously. We don't acknowledge it daily. See, the Bible's clear that one day we will stand before God, all of us, and we will be asked about whether we accepted the free gift of Jesus that was rained down from heaven for us. We'll be asked one day. So my question is, will you let the work of the cross, where he took your sin, your failure, your shame, apply into your life? What will you do with this bread from heaven? I speak to you now, even as a follower of Jesus. What will you do with this bread from heaven for the rest of today and when you wake up tomorrow morning? Will you be able to say, I see Jesus as my whole, full provision from God? Will you receive him as a free gift of grace? Will I take my grumbling and my murmuring and replace it with thankfulness? Will I see afresh and anew that there is sweetness and provision in the desert places? There is living water that can spring up, as water came from this rock. This living water in the form of Jesus Christ, in the person of Jesus Christ, springs up in the most unlikely desert places. And that can be my story. Let's worship him together.